Hello, my name is Frank Massinio and I am the principal and founder of Solutions Architecture. I want to thank you for taking the time to review this presentation to learn a little bit more about Bridgewater-Raritan's referendum planning and the FFT committee recommendations to the board. The district is intent on educating its students to reach their full potential and believes that the facilities play a large part in their ability to do so. This referendum was put together through the efforts of the Board of Education, Superintendent of Schools, Business Administrator, Director of Facilities, and District Administrators. Solutions Architecture was brought on board to work with the administration and staff to identify and prioritize needed facility improvements in the district. We conducted a district-wide facility assessment, scanning and evaluating every building in the district to determine ways to improve the existing facilities infrastructure and come up with projects that ensure safe and functional schools. Our work would ultimately result in recommendations to the Board of Education. A large component of our charge was to consider ways to make all of the recommended improvements while taking advantage of debt service rolling off, so that there would be a net neutral tax impact to the community. Under the proposed referendum, the Bridgewater-Raritan Regional School District will request funding for a district-wide facilities renovation program that would include potential capital infrastructure, classroom renovation projects, and additions via a referendum to be held on March 7th, 2023. The district wants to ensure that we are educating our students to reach their full potential. So why has the district chosen now to address these issues? Well, the reality is we're dealing with aging schools, the oldest sections of these buildings being 61 years old, and some with original windows, doors, and other infrastructure items that have reached the end of their useful life. In spite of the 2% tax levy cap, the Board of Education and Administration have successfully addressed many facility needs within the operating budget. However, given the number of projects necessary, it's very difficult for Bridgewater-Raritan or any other school district to be able to handle all of those needs within the operating budget. We need to do more. Another reason for why now is that the district has significant debt service rolling off, which could result in a net neutral tax impact or zero increase in the current tax burden. Current interest rates are also very reasonable, but won't stay there forever. And finally, by allowing the school district to finance these substantial facilities improvements over many years, that cost is now spread over many generations who will ultimately use the facilities. Here you'll see a graphical representation of the referendum and the availability of debt service aid, which could provide millions in savings for the Bridgewater-Raritan School District. Current debt service payments are ending in 2023, and those debt service payments could offset the targeted March 2023 referendum costs. State aid is available on all referendum projects that are tied to education or rehabilitation, and that debt service aid helps pay down the bond and reduces the impact to the taxpayer. The district is eligible for up to 34% in debt service aid on all eligible projects. I must point out that current debt service aid calculations are estimated and are subject to change based on the review and approval by the Department of Education. The pre-referendum timeline. Our process has not been one that's occurred overnight. In fact, significant effort has been placed over the last year in conducting the facilities audit, beginning pre-referendum service phase, reviewing the proposed scope, conducting staff interviews, releasing a wants and needs survey to both the community, the Board of Education, and the staff, refine and finalize the scope of work with an ad hoc community committee to collect input on the needs and desires for any potential referendum, finalize the size of additions necessary for a potential full-day kindergarten program, and present these findings with the committee to the full Board of Education. From there, the board will have time to review the data and make an approval for a DOE submission. From there, Solutions Architecture will develop schematic documents, prepare cost estimates and educational specifications, and the required state submission packages for each school in the district. This process will take 3 to 4 months. Our critical date would be a DOE submission on May 11th, 2022, which gives us a significant amount of time for DOE to approve these projects. As you may or may not know, the Department of Education is short-staffed and their approval time is taking significantly longer. So by planning ahead, we are getting ahead of the curve to make sure that reviews are completed in time and hopefully by June of 2022. From that point, armed with approvals, we would begin public presentations, announcing the referendum plans, addressing these issues and concerns at back-to-school night, and then taking time to make sure that the public has all of the information necessary to understand and make an informed decision about the referendum. In January, the district will notify the County Board of Elections of the potential vote, and on March 7th, 2023, the vote will commence. Planning and analysis. Let's talk a little bit about the planning timeline to date. As noted earlier, from March to June of 2021, Solutions Architecture conducted a facilities audit. We evaluated each of the facilities against a number of criteria and provided recommendations to the district for capital improvement projects at each of the schools. From June to September, we sent out surveys. A board survey, a committee survey, and a staff administration surveys were prepared and administered, and the results were compiled and presented to the FFT committee. From September to December, we collected and analyzed and sorted the data. We had meetings with the staff and the FFT to collect more info, to review the projects that were provided, to review the budgets and costs, and modify our approach based on the info and data collected in the surveys. From November 2021 to January 2022, we met and presented the projects and assessments to the community committee and worked with the committee to narrow down the focus for the referendum. From January to present day, we are reviewing and finalizing the scope, putting together the final listing and budget for presentation by the FFT committee to the Board of Education. I should point out that the ultimate project listing that was presented by the FFT committee to the Board of Education was all-encompassing, and while it doesn't represent everything that the district wants to do, they were held to create a palatable referendum that the community would support. In order to maintain the balance of a palatable referendum, looking at the net neutral number and the willingness to expand the referendum should the community want to support it, the district has chosen to break down the referendum into 2 questions. For the 2-part question, question 1 would consist of renovations. These would support the zero impact goal and would be comprised of all capital, educational, and facilities infrastructure projects. On the other hand, question 2 would support the district's goal of expanding for full-day kindergarten and adding much-needed core facility additions. These would add an additional tax impact. So what are the projects that are proposed that would be included in question 1? We've broken down this referendum to address scope in various project categories, from the arts, learning, and wellness, which make up enhanced learning environments, to safety for student and staff, and operations, keeping up to date with waning facilities infrastructure. Our facilities enhance learning and provide the district the opportunity to offer an enhanced and progressive curriculum. The capital projects included in question 1 are as follows. Schools will receive site work, including ADA accessibility, sidewalk fencing upgrades, gates for security, traffic control for drop-off and pick-up at certain schools, a new entrance plaza and toilet room addition at Basilone Field, exterior masonry repairs, roofing replacements, window and curtain wall replacements at the original 1960s sections of buildings, Toilet room upgrades also for the older 1960s sections. All-purpose room finishes, graphics, and technology. Mechanical upgrades that include air conditioning throughout. Electrical upgrades that'll support the new air conditioning being provided. Plumbing upgrades, sanitary backups, and storm drainage issues continue to plague the district, so those will be addressed. Clock and PA speaker replacements that would include security tie-ins for lockdowns and specific security needs. Door and hardware replacements, including current security hardware and safety glazing. These also address security and lockdown situations. Lighting upgrades, particularly the exterior for safety and security. A lot of the exteriors do not have the required egress lighting necessary, so those will all be upgraded. And then there are secure vestibule renovations and security upgrades. Many of the schools do not have a true secure vestibule, which would allow for the safe vetting of visitors and ensuring that they are properly vetted prior to allowing them in the building. Not every school will receive every one of these upgrades. The recommendations are all made on existing conditions at those buildings. Since a picture is worth 1,000 words, we wanted to share with you some images of existing conditions and what those conditions could look like reimagined or reconstructed. On the left is a picture of a boiler. On the right is what those boilers could look like. There's significant deterioration in the piping and in the boilers themselves. They are beyond their useful lives and they won't last much longer. Replacing them is our best option. HVAC. Many of the rooms already have existing unit ventilators that have been original to the building, and the district has already begun to undertake a program of replacing those unit ventilators with rooftop units and ductwork to provide better distribution and heating and cooling to the classroom spaces. Windows. Many of our windows and curtain walls are single pane and the panels are deteriorated and chipping. They offer very little energy efficiency and operability. The referendum will replace those with dual glazed, efficient windows and window systems with screens and shades that operate and perform properly. The existing toilet rooms are in a state of disrepair. And I'm not simply talking about the aesthetics of the tile or the flooring condition, but I'm talking about the operability of the fixtures, the lack of water conservation measures that are in place, the fact that there's no infrared touchless faucets and flush valves. These toilet rooms suffer from leaking and inoperable fixtures, as well as deteriorated tile and flooring. The picture on the right would show what a toilet room should look like. New tile, new epoxy floors, which is a monolithic floor. There's no grout joints, there's no germs to deal with. There's a floor drain in the floor that could aid with the cleaning and maintenance of these spaces. New toilet partitions that would impact anti-graffiti measures, things like that. Doors and security. The existing doors in the buildings, while they may be in operable condition, not all of the doors have the appropriate hardware which would allow a teacher to lock the door in the event of an emergency without the use of a key. The hardware would all be replaced, as in the image you see on the right, that would show whether the door is open or locked, would allow the teacher with a thumb turn to be able to lock the door in an emergency. Shades are also provided on all classroom doors to obscure view into the room should a would-be attacker enter the building. Secure vestibules. Many of the schools, while they do have an A-phone and a secure exterior door, once the person is allowed to enter the building, they can go anywhere in the building. They don't have to go directly to the office before being vetted. Under the new scenario, we would create a vestibule with a double set of doors with laminated glass, a secure transaction window where someone would come in, provide their license, be scanned through a database to determine whether they're on any watch list, and therefore receive a visitor's pass and be allowed to enter the building. Only after complete vetting is done, would they be able to enter the building. We also provide areas within the vestibule to allow for items to be dropped off should a student forget a lunch or a backpack, so that they don't even have to come into the building at all. Exterior lighting. Many of the school districts suffer from a darkened exterior. The code requires that appropriate egress lighting is provided to the public way or the drive or the parking area, and in many cases that's not the case. So we would be providing new exterior lighting fixtures with the appropriate lighting levels at the exterior locations of those schools in need. Site improvements and traffic control. Many of the schools have issues with queuing and drop-off, and there are very tight areas where the process is not as efficient and safe as it should be. We would be analyzing that and those schools to provide a better queuing and drop-off and pick-up procedure. Exterior site improvements, exterior walls. As you can see in the image, many of the walls are allowing water to penetrate. They're cracking, they're spalling. The grout is popping out because of a freeze-thaw process. Many of these areas on the buildings will be repointed and addressed so that they do not allow the continuous infiltration of water. Site areas that are not currently ADA compliant will be provided with curb cuts and appropriate slope and railings necessary to provide ADA access to the building. Field house improvements. As you can see from the images, the existing toilet facilities are grossly inadequate to handle the number of people that attend the games. The front entrance leaves much to be desired in terms of accessibility, walkways. So the intent would be to reimagine that entrance and plaza area of Basilone Field to be able to provide a more appropriate field and entrance for Bridgewater-Raritan. So now let's talk about the educational projects included in question 1. Science, technology, and labs are a very, very big component in today's curriculum. The district doesn't have appropriate spaces for these very progressive programs. The image on the left is an image that is currently being used for STEM or science, but the image on the right is what that room could look like. The room has to be constructed in order to support a progressive curriculum. You can see power reels hanging from the ceiling, progressive lighting. This room can be used from everything from robotics to fabrication to disassembly, 3D printing, machining. This room could be the next evolution of science and technology. The existing locker rooms have become a shining example of wasted space. Group showers used years ago have now become areas of inefficient storage, housing everything from furniture to carts to athletic equipment. There's simply too much unused square footage that is a valuable resource that shouldn't be reclaimed. Under a renovation program, we would relay out the existing locker rooms and hope to reclaim some of this valuable square footage for small group instruction, classroom space, or even better laid out efficient storage with the appropriate storage systems. The example on the right is what this locker room could look like. Appropriate shower stalls, providing privacy for the students who choose or need to take a shower. Providing new lockers, double tier, single tier, as required for team sports or individual or phys ed. Auditorium upgrades. The existing auditoriums suffer from inefficient lighting and inefficient acoustics. The intent of any renovations would be to address new LED lighting for the stage and for the house, as well as additional acoustical treatments that would provide a better acoustical environment for performances. The image on the right is a brighter, more vibrant, and acoustically sound auditorium. Now let's turn to question number 2 and look at the projects proposed under that question. Question number 2 would allow for additions necessary to support a full-day kindergarten program. Those additions would be strategically placed at schools based upon need for the additional classroom space. The image on the left is what one of those additions could look like, and a full-day kindergarten classroom could look like the image shown on the right. I should point out that design of these spaces would not be done until after the referendum passes. The state of New Jersey does not allow for the full design of these projects until such time as the referendum passes, so that the district doesn't encumber design fees for a referendum that might not pass. In addition to the full-day kindergarten program, the second question would support additional core facility additions that would support either a cafeteria or a gymnasium at those schools that currently are in need. So now let's look at the proposed cost projections for the referendum. For question 1, the proposed costs would include all of the items we discussed prior and would include those enhanced learning environments, student and staff safety and security, operations issues including mechanical, plumbing, AC upgrades, building envelope, building interiors, and site improvements. The total project costs are $126,500,000, and under the debt service aid availability, we would estimate the district would receive $41 million in debt service aid, which would reduce the net cost of the projects to $85,474,600, or approximately 32.5% in debt service aid. The reason for 32.5% is because site improvements are typically ineligible for funding. In question number 2, the proposed costs are broken down into enhanced learning environments for the needed core facility additions and enhanced learning environments necessary for full-day kindergarten additions. The total cost of those projects is $29,312,500. For new construction, debt service aid is figured at a different calculation than the others and therefore is not eligible unless the district can significantly show unhoused students to support their claim. As a conservative measure, we estimate 0% in debt service aid, in spite of the fact that when we submit to the Department of Education, we will attempt to put in for debt service aid. Final cost for these projects would remain at $29,312,500 or 0% debt service aid. When we evaluate both question 1 and question 2 in terms of costs, it results in a overall referendum cost of $155,868,300. The estimated debt service aid of $41,081,200 would come off the top and result in a net cost of $114,787,100, or 26.4% in debt service aid. So what does that mean to you, the taxpayer? Under question 1, should the referendum pass, that includes renovations for all capital and educational facility infrastructure projects on the average assessed home in Bridgewater of $488,933 and in Raritan of $320,525. The project cost after debt service aid for question 1 projects would be $85,474,600. This would result in a 0% tax increase per year for Bridgewater and for Raritan as well. Current debt service aid calculations are being done conservatively and are subject to change based upon final review by DOE. All cost projections are based on current interest rates, and the cost may fluctuate prior to the vote. For question 2, comprised of the additions for full-day kindergarten and core facilities, the total project cost after debt service aid is estimated at $29,312,500 on the average assessed home in Bridgewater of $488,933 or Raritan of $320,525. The increase per year would be $81.50 for Bridgewater or $61.50 per year for Raritan. Again, these debt service aid calculations are conservative and subject to change based on DOE approval. So based upon the number of meetings that we've held, there have been a series of frequently asked questions that we thought we'd include here. What will happen to the children before, during, and after construction work? Safety is always a prime concern while work is being done, and therefore we would try to schedule the renovations and construction so that they are completed during the summer months when school is not in session. There are projects that will be completed while school is in session that would occur on 3 to 11 shift, and therefore we would minimize and separate the students from construction at all times. Can more money be spent than the amount approved in the question? And the very simple answer is no. The cost of the referendum projects cannot exceed the amount of money approved by the voters, not by 1 penny. The amount approved by the voters does include a reasonable budget under which to complete our work, as well as contingencies that will address unforeseen conditions and construction issues. If the district runs into an issue where costs are coming in higher, they cannot add money from capital reserve or any other funding account to support this referendum. We would have to scale back on the work in order to get it done. When would the work begin, and when will it be completed? Given the size of the district and the number of buildings being entertained in this referendum, we would need to create a schedule for the implementation of the projects that would carefully consider building operations, timing, and safety. While some projects could begin construction as early as the summer of 2023, given the timing of a March referendum, we would want to determine our ability to strategically bid projects at appropriate times that we're going to get better pricing. Projects that are put out closer to summer months tend to be higher in price. Yet projects that are put out at the end of the summer or early winter would receive better pricing. Other projects that require more time to develop and designing will begin later in the 2023 year or summers of 2024 through 2028. Again, allowing flexibility of schedules to bid these projects gives us the most flexibility and in turn the best pricing for this work. I want to thank you for taking the time to walk with me through Bridgewater-Raritan Regional School District's referendum presentation to learn a little bit more about the projects included and what the district's goals are. For more information, please visit the district's website, where you can obtain additional information on the upcoming March 7th, 2023 referendum. Thank you again.